Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's podcast. I'm Thomas Hubert, news correspondent with the Irish Farmers Journal. Coming up on the show this week, remembering the big snow of 1982.
I was approached one morning to supply a horse to pull the sheep out of the waterways in the Gelty Mountains.
And we hear from young farmers on the future of suckler farming.
The young people aren't encouraged to be suckler farmers anymore. Anyone who has an interest in agriculture is more, it'll pay more to go off and get a job rather than stay suckler farming. Personally, I think it's a lovely way of life, but the margins are too small in it and it's not profitable enough.
But first, let's take a step back in time. Last week, the IFA and Pat Smith settled a legal dispute with a €1.9 million payment from the association to its former General Secretary. The president of the IFA, at the time of Pat Smith's departure in November 2015, was Eddie Downey. In a rare public speech at the Meath IFA AGM on Monday, he talked about what happened at the time. Irish Farmers Journal news correspondent Pat O'Toole was there.
In November 2015, Eddie Downey resigned as president of the IFA in the wake of the pay scandal that had seen General Secretary Pat Smith resign just days earlier. Since then, he has largely maintained his silence. But with Pat Smith and the IFA having settled their differences last week, with the IFA paying $1.9 million to Mr. Smith, Eddie Downey was free to speak. And he addressed the IFA AGM in his home county of Meath last Monday night.
The music stopped and I was holding the parcel, the president said it. The music stopped again and I have no chair.
This comment referred to him feeling restricted by the legal settlement and that he couldn't give a full disclosure. But Downey especially wanted to give his account of the events of the day that Pat Smith resigned and to refute media reports of what had happened. Here he quotes one media report from RTE News.
That Eddie Downey signed the document under protest. And as George Lee said this, not Eddie Downey said it now. Under protest from the Treasurer, the Financial Controller and the Deputy President. And in fact, they tried to stop him. Now you all know Eddie Downey's an idiot. And if somebody tried to stop him doing something like that and signing a €2 million deal with a man, and a couple of people were shouting, don't do it, that I'd go ahead like an idiot and do it. You know, I did not do that. That did not happen.
So how did ordinary farmers react to the settlement agreed between the IFA and Pat Smith? News correspondent Hannah Quinn Mulligan went to Cootehill Mart in County Cavan to find out.
So what do you think of the settlement between the IFA and Pat Smith?
Would not be happy with it, no.
Do you think it's going to affect their membership again?
Maybe not so much this time, but it'll cause a lot of talk.
And what was the reaction like, say, when it happened in 2015 in this part of the country?
A lot of farmers, I'd be drawing cattle there to the factories now. You know the way you'd be stopping the IFA money in the factories. They started writing me out letters every house I went to. Straight away, they get stopped that they wouldn't have to. They had to send a note in saying that didn't want the IFA money stopped there, the cattle being killed anymore. So immediately they were getting stopped. So that was the first reaction. They weren't happy people when they...
Is there still bad feeling about it?
Don't hear so much about it now. Maybe tonight now with the crowd here, you'll hear a bit more about it now. I'd say there'll be more reaction than they had said.
Okay, I'll let you go ahead, enjoy the night anyway. Thank you. 2 seconds. So what do you think of the settlement?
It's probably fair from the contractual agreement that he had.
Because you've been working with them for over 20 years.
Yeah, and a very experienced negotiator.
And are you happy with the legacy that he's left behind him?
If he had to be given a chance, maybe he would have explained himself quite a bit better. Maybe.
Okay, thank you very much. What do you think of the settlement between the IFA and Pat Smith?
Well, he got a lot of money for what happened, you know, so essentially that means that we're all going to have to pay for like that, you know.
And is that fair, do you think?
Not really, no.
Do you think the IFA's reputation has suffered because of it?
I think so, yeah.
And are you IFA members?
Yes, yeah.
But did you question your membership or anything like that after 2015?
I think we kind of stalled going back into it, we think about it, but essentially, like at the end of the day, you know, the organisation, apart from the leadership of the organisation is a good organisation. maybe perhaps what happened maybe is a one-off,
Yeah.
That remains to be seen, obviously,
I think it did suffer the last time, so it did. There was a bit of controversy, so it did. A lot of people didn't renew their subscription again, so they didn't. But it seems like a lot of money he's after getting, so it is. And as Joyce said there, it's us that's going to end up suffering. So it is. It could have been money that was maybe better spent. So it could have been what happened. So it's over the slip of a tongue.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Pat O'Toole also attended the last public consultation meeting on CAP in Claremorris, County Mayo last week. Farmers told him what kind of farm supports they would like to see after 2020.
We've had a long evening. People are starting to break up now and move away. The last of the CAP consultation meetings is over. We've been here since people started to gather around 7:30. We've been taking views and soundings from people. We've been asking them what the priority from the CAP process is, what the West of Ireland in particular needs from the CAP, and how farming is facing into the 2020s, which is what this process is all about. Here are their views.
I'm here tonight because in 2011 I was forced to hand over the farm to my mother, because otherwise it would be gone through family law. In 2014, the Department of Agriculture decided they weren't going to pay in that contract anymore, that it was finished. But yet the contract is there, it is signed, it is witnessed, it was paid on for 3 years, and then they decided they wouldn't pay on it. So I'm here to ask the Minister tonight, is he going to honour his contract or not?
We have a costed submission here to give to Andrew tonight. Basically, we'd like to cap it at 35,000, front load the first 20 hectares at €375 a hectare and €150 on every hectare after that. We'd like €200 suckler cow grant.
And this is budget neutral, is it? This will be in the context of the current cap?
This is budget neutral and has been costed, yes. But we're going to try and get our point across here now, tonight. I'm an AFA member myself, but I don't know will they come behind us on this.
What I'd be hoping to impose on the government is to use a bit of common sense here, because basically, we can't have all the action in one sector in one sector of agriculture and nothing in another sector. We're all part of the one country, and we all do the same job. Maybe, it might be on a different scale or different type of farming or whatever. But the single farm payment was introduced to subsidise farm families fairly across the board. And when I was younger, there was no money in it; it didn't really matter. But the younger generation of today, if you can't say to them there's X amount of a single farm payment there, they're not going to stay. And we have people on 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 of a single farm payment. In this day and age, it's just unacceptable going forward.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
Now, you may well be snowed in as you're listening to this podcast, and many of you will remember the last time the beast from the east hit Ireland. That was in 1982, and hundreds of sheep died in snowdrifts. Packy Morrissey remembers it well. He spoke with Irish Farmers Journal Deputy News Editor Katrina Morrissey.
I'm Packy Morrissey from Baldoobie, County Tipperary. In 1982 I worked as a general worker in the County Council in Arfinnan under Jim Butler. I was approached one morning to supply a horse to pull the sheep out of the waterways in the Gelty Mountains. And I went and got the horse and got him up to the mountain, and PJ Cullinan was the water inspector at the same time. And we had to get the sheep out. There could be 10 or 15 sheep, maybe 20 sheep in a bunch under a ledge in the mountain. It was to pull them out by hand and then hitch on the horse to him, and he'd walk along, pull them out. You pull him out to the clear way, he could walk out to the top with them.
And they were all caught in snow, was it?
They were all caught smothered in snow, yeah.
Okay.
The snow came in over the cliffs, and the sheep were in the shelter and they got smothered.
Okay.
And they were pulled out to a lay-by, and then later on they were pulled out the mountain to be burned or something like that. I think that's what they eventually done with them. And I think I gave a week at it, non-stop.
How many sheep do you think?
I would say up to 200 sheep.
All on the Galties?
All on the Galties, just under the mountain lodge above now, along there, under the mountain lodge, down to the car park, in just as you turn out to the mountain lodge. And pulled them all out to the lay-by, and then we had to pull them all out to the mountain.
And what did you use to pull them out with?
The horses
the
pulled
horse?
them out, yeah, the horses pulled them out. And I think there was a deer then came on, and I think I was sent back where I was working again, and I assume that's what they said they were going to do, and they burned the sheep or something.
And were they sheep with lambs, or were they older sheep, or what were they?
They'd be ewes in lamb anyway. And the mountain sheep would be later lambing than the lowland ewes, so they would be in lamb.
Yeah.
And we saw no young lambs at all, though. We saw no young lambs, but there was lots and lots of sheep in different places.
All killed in the snow?
All killed in the smothered in the snow, yeah. We saw no sheep walking around at that time until the snow all cleared off, and whatever farmers had them in the sheds or whatever, then they released them out the mountain again. But up to that, whatever was caught in the mountain was smothered.
And that time was the snow on the lower ground as well, or was it just on the mountain?
Yeah.
How deep was it, say, on the lowland versus the mountain?
Our fin and Takea could be 4 feet high. And I remember John Gorman was driving one of the snow ploughs, and we were at the butt of the hill in Arfinnan, and he said, stand back and I'll push it out of the way. And he came down and he was soonly jackknifed into the ditch. The lorry and the plough, the whole lot.
Right.
And it was Mickey Doherty that came on with a tractor and a front loader, and he the power loader, and he done more work to get people through than all the machines. And I remember that quite very plain.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
Farmers in the northwest were hit by a more recent freak weather event, the flash floods that devastated homes, farms, roads and marts last August in counties Donegal, Derry and Tyrone. Dr. Alan Dykes from Kingston University in London studied the disaster and came to the region to explain his findings last week. Irish Farmers Journal Northern Ireland correspondent Peter McCann met him.
I suppose, can you explain really what actually caused this severe downpour of rain that really fell within a very short space of time, or what do you think caused it anyway from the data and your interpretation of the damage afterwards?
I suspect that this was a localised convection cell, like a thunder cell, within a wider ranging, slow-moving weather system. And a convection cell that became so intense that it didn't move with the system but stayed in one place.
So what does that mean? Sorry, a convection cell?
Yeah. Thunderstorms result from warm air rising rapidly, cold air coming down rapidly to replace it, and the changeover of that air at altitude causes water to condense out of the air and give you the heavy rainfall.
So is that common, a convection cell that doesn't move in a storm? Is that something that's going to become more likely with climate change and that type of thing? Or?
It may become more likely over time. I only know of this effect from a couple of previous such incidents of major landslide events like this, but there have been so few such incidents generally that I've no idea how common this particular effect is overall.
I suppose you say in previous incidents, where's that happened? Is it taking place in Ireland, in Britain, or
all of the incidents I know of are in the British Isles. If heavy rainfall generating lots of landslides in a small area, I know of 10 incidents in 50 years for the whole of the British Isles in different places. And the one particular event that I'm most familiar with happened in County Mayo in the Republic in 2003, when 90 millimetres of rain in 1.5 hours set off 40 landslides within 3 square kilometres on one mountain.
So just comparing that to what happened in Glenelly, how many landslides occurred, and how much rainfall do you think fell in that time, and on what space of time to cause that?
We know that the rainfall fell in about 3 hours in the evening in Glenelly. The nearest weather stations show about 50 millimetres of rain. I suspect that the amount of rain in this part of the valley where the landslides happened was probably significantly higher.
Right. And I suppose some of the farmers here tonight are looking at their land, especially where the landslides happen in uplands, are concerned that they're looking at the bare peat lying top. They're concerned that it's more prone to slide again, or the land above it that didn't slide the first time could go again. So you're saying if it's once every 50 years, 10 and 50 years in the British Isles, that's quite unlikely? Is it?
I think it is extremely unlikely. If the slope didn't slide in this rainfall, then it's not going to slide. And the fact of the landslides happening means that the soil and peat layers further up are now probably better drained than they were before, making any slides further up less likely than would have been the case before.
So finally, Dr. Eggs, for farmers that have that, this is on farmers in uplands where they have these peat landslides. What is the advice for the restoration of that land to make it, it has to be a good agricultural condition for area-based payments here, or what is the advice there?
I can't say anything about policy or funding and so on, but in my experience of seeing these sites, generally they just get left to their own devices. Loose blocks of soil and peat will dry out and decay, shrink a bit. Bare surfaces will eventually regrow with natural grasses and mosses, and a landslide with a large area of completely bare mineral material after several decades will be fairly well revegetated throughout. So obviously it takes a long time, but there's nothing to be gained by trying to accelerate that process, because in general that will tend to create more problems than the present situation of just leaving it be.
This was Alan Dykes talking to Peter McCann. Stay tuned, we're following James Bond on a Scottish farm after this break.
This week's Irish Farmers Journal has essential advice for keeping you, your farm and your livestock safe during the big freeze. We detail how to keep your parlour and machinery in working order, how to keep water flowing, how to look after your livestock in extreme cold, and we've a farm safety checklist for you and your family. And if you're snowed in, don't worry, we'll bring the Irish Farmers Journal to you. Read the exact same content as you see in print online at farmersjournal.ie. Plus, save 30% on a 1-year digital subscription today. This special offer ends in 5 days. This week's Irish Farmers Journal is on sale now in print and online.
Paolo Berardelli is an organic beef and sheep farmer grazing his animals on 4,000 acres in the Highlands of Scotland. His farm peaks at 3,850 feet, and it was the setting for the dramatic end to the James Bond film Skyfall. Paolo talked to Odile Evans of Farmers Journal Scotland about his life on the highest organic farm in the UK.
So, Paolo, where are you farming?
Hi there. We're farming at the Great Glen Cattle Ranch, which is up near Spean Bridge.
Okay.
We have 700 hectares there. We have 100 Galloway cows and 400 blackface ewes, and then in Glencoe we have probably getting on for 4,000 hectares, maybe not quite half owned, and the rest rented from the National Trust on a 5-year lease.
Okay.
And there is approximately 1,000 blackface ewes there, and both places are organic.
Okay.
Been run organic since about 2005.
Right. Quite an interesting business model then.
Yeah.
What are the jobs this week then? What's happening on the farm this week?
Obviously feeding cows every day. We produce just about enough silage on our better fields at the cattle ranch to feed our cows through the winter, so that goes on every day. And the sheep generally fend for themselves, but we do feed some sheep down in Glencoe, some of the ones that come lower down. So that's going on a daily basis really just now. The shepherd down there, he does a lot of vermin control. Quite a big problem with foxes down there. Not so much sea eagles yet, but we're waiting on them coming.
You're not too far from the sea, I suppose.
No. You don't have to be by the sea to get sea eagles.
How many people are involved in it? There's yourself?
Yes, myself, my father, who's now 79, still does quite a lot every day. Shepherd, full-time shepherd, and my 15-year-old son, who basically runs the whole thing. Just completely in the background. Yeah.
And tell us, what was the decision to go into organic farming? Why did you decide to?
Financially, mostly, it was just quite a good payment at the time to do what we were doing, because we farmed quite extensively anyway. So the change from one to the other wasn't a big change.
Yeah.
So we just saw it as a way of getting the conversion payment and then latterly maintenance payments for basically doing what we'd be doing otherwise. You know, there wasn't a lot of change.
So who do you sell your stock to?
So our sheep go to another organic farm, a dairy farm, George Hendry up in Elgin, west of Manbeen. So he just grazes them on his dairy grass and supplements them a wee bit and gets them away sort of January, February, March type of thing. They all the lambs go to him, and all the calves go to Duncan Hepburn up in Inverness, and he's again another organic farmer, mostly sort of more arable carrots and potatoes and stuff. So but he finishes, I don't know, maybe about 2,000 cattle, I think so.
And when's lambing start for you?
Not till about 15th of April.
Okay, so the snow would be gone, maybe?
Well, let's hope so.
And you're just feeding outside at the minute, are you?
Yeah. All the Galloway cows are all out wintered.
Yeah.
So they're all, we have some quite nice sheltered oak woodland that they get fed close to, so they disappear in there if it's a nasty sort of day. Other than that, they'll go out and graze the hill in the afternoon after being fed, yeah.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast.
The Save Our Sucklers campaign, organised by the Irish Farmers Journal and the IFA, continues to unfold with meetings at marts around the country. This week, Louise Denver spoke with young farmers about their views on the future of suckler farming.
The young people aren't encouraged to be suckler farmers anymore. Anyone who has an interest in agriculture it'll pay more to go off and get a job rather than stay suckler farming. Personally, I think it's a lovely way of life, but the margins are too small in it and it's not profitable enough. Even this morning, we were in a farm in Kilbeggan, County Westmeath, and the farmer was telling us that he can't make money with his cattle, and that if he could, he'd just be finishing cattle in the summer, that he's trying to finish cattle in the winter, and it's just not profitable.
I feel suckler farming is at a loss at the moment. There's a lot of people after getting out of it. The farmers in the west of Ireland, they're going rearing calves. I was in Bendemark last Monday, and calves are a real good trade there. And a lot of people taking them up the Midlands and West to rear calves where normally suckler cows would have been there. And every market in the country now you see an advertisement every week for a dispersal sale for sucklers. And these people aren't getting back into them. Everyone's going dairy and different aspects of beef farming. They're not going to sucklers anymore, which is a real shame.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
Last week, I was at the annual conference organised by the Irish Bioenergy Association. Although we're still waiting for the full details of government schemes that will help the industry take off and farmers take part, there was clearly a growing interest in biomass and biogas from a range of private sector players. I asked the association's chief executive, Ger Devlin, about the mood in the industry.
Thomas, very positive today. I mean, we had an extremely eventful day. We made a decision last year that we want to take our conference to a new level. We brought it here to Croke Park, which is a national stadium. It's been very, very successful. We have an excess of 300 attendees today. We had 32 full exhibition spaces on display here today, all from a technology provider in terms of biomass technology, bioenergy technology, and then from even the consumer point of view. So we saw lots of people like Dairy Gold, Diageo, people like ABB Food Group, all very, very active in their own right in the home bioenergy space with the work they're doing in terms of sustainability, incorporating bioenergy projects. And the key message or the key goal for us was to bring real commercial activity to the conference, people who are active in this area within their own right, but also getting the consumers or consumers who want to use bioenergy, talking to the people who supply the technology and who supply the woody biomass. So it's been a very, very successful event today from my perspective.
As you said, there is a kind of B2B energy, if I may use the word, that you can feel in the room, that people are more interested in biting into it. Maybe before, my image of the sector was specialist bioenergy companies waiting a lot for government supports, and now we hear people, like you said, Dairy Gold, ABB Food Group, who are kind of on the margin of bioenergy, but biting into it. Is there a shift in this aspect of things? less reliance on government schemes, even though we heard today they are coming?
I think there's been quite a seismic shift in the last 6 months. We've seen a lot of activity, and RBI are very conscious of the change that's needed to kickstart the bioenergy industry, and we've put a lot of work behind that in the last year to try and do that. And who we've seen here today and who has attended is very much a testament to that. The subsidy scheme is still very, very relevant. I mean, that is an important player in the game. The support scheme for renewable heat is extremely important. We have seen it launched at the end of last year. People are much more optimistic. They see now new opportunities for their businesses, sustainable bioenergy growth, really, from, as I said, a technology provider, but also a biomass supply end of it as well. So it's a very, very important part of the work that we do to make sure that we see a full implementation now of the support scheme for renewable heat. But on top of that, there's huge other opportunities, because we've seen the consultations around the biofuels obligation scheme, which is about decarbonising our transport sector. We also see it now with the renewable electricity support scheme. So these are things that are snowballing at the minute. We have our SSRH, and that's where the low-hanging fruit will be, and that will build into the BOS and into the RES scheme as well. So the future certainly is much more optimistic than it has ever been before.
There were presentations from companies that are actually Irish, but most of their bioenergy activity is happening overseas, whether it's ERL in Hungary or ABP Food Group. All their bioenergy stuff is happening in the UK. How do we make sure, or Bord na Móna importing wood pellets from the US, so how do we make sure this is an indigenous industry and it benefits ultimately the farmers who are producing those primary sources of energy?
I think when we've seen some of those companies who are active in overseas, in the UK in particular, the tariffs are much better there for subsidy schemes, and that's why they've worked so well. We've seen the RHI really work well in the UK. We've seen their biofuels obligation scheme work really well. We've seen that with Olico and the company that's been set up by ABP Food Group. Very, very impressive, making biodiesel from used cooking oil. It's a very good success story. Indigenous supply, I think Bord na Móna certainly made a very, very good presentation today. I think they said a lot of clear messages about exactly what Bord na Móna are doing, how sustainable they actually are in their supply chain. And even though they are importing, or they plan to import, wood pellets, and they're currently importing wood chips for their current biomass co-firing, they show how serious they are taking their supply chain. And I think it's a mixture of both, indigenous supply matched with importation as well. I think Bord na Móna, while they have a biomass industry, it's been probably portrayed quite negative to a degree in the media about exactly what they're doing. But I think we got a very clear message today of what exactly they're doing, and it looks very positive. Obviously, they had said before they will get the indigenous first if they can get it before they import the biomass, and that's the key message too. They want to use the indigenous. They want to engage with landowners. They want them to grow the energy crops. They want the residues and the wood chips that they can get at a local level, and that's one of the key issues. If they can't get it, they still have a commitment to co-fire. So what they're doing is creating a backup plan with that importation option scenario.
Final point, I suppose, is a lot of discussions today were about biogas, and that's interesting to farmers because several speakers said today will come from their farms, from their slurry, from their grass. Is there really a possibility to bring biogas from remote areas of rural Ireland into the consumption centres? Is it pie in the sky, or is it something you see happening anytime soon?
I think gas networks are big advocates of biogas. The future for biogas actually is probably more biogas to biomethane, so grid injection. So by doing that, so you're targeting decarbonisation of the heat sector and the transport sector, especially if the transport sector moves to compressed natural gas. So where heavy goods vehicles are coming off the diesels and replacing them with biomethane. That's a very, very good solution, and it works very well. And I think AD as a whole has a big role to play in decarbonising the agri sector as well. And gas networks have a map of where the best locations are for injection points into their grid. And once you could feed that locally from that supply, it makes very, very good sense. And there's a huge opportunity. We didn't see a biomethane subsidy in the recent RHI, but we know that certainly the department are working, and they have a call out to industry to give them a single message how they need to implement it.
Gerard Devlin, thank you very much.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast.
That's it for this week. The sound editor was Ferdi Amouni. From me, Thomas Hubert, all the best and stay warm.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie and on iTunes every Thursday.